I want you to imagine for a second that you've just survived a brutal, life-saving organ transplant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you were on death's door, you finally got the surgery, and you woke up, and there's just this immense, overwhelming relief.
Right. The monitor is beeping steadily. You survived.
Exactly. You, the listener, you get to go home and just live your life.
It's the ultimate exhalation.
Yeah.
The immediate crisis is over, and your brain is just, well, it's flooded with gratitude that you are still breathing. You defeated the thing that was trying to kill you.
But then, let's say as the weeks go by, you start looking in the mirror. You start paying closer attention to your body.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And you realize this new life-saving organ is doing something absolutely terrifying.
What's it doing?
It's not just pumping blood or filtering toxins to keep you alive. It's slowly, methodically rewriting your DNA.
Oh, that's a horrifying thought.
Right. It's changing your impulses. It's turning you into the exact disease you thought you just beat.
I mean, that is the ultimate biological betrayal. You destroyed the parasite, only to slowly realize that the parasite's logic has completely irreversibly infected the host.
Exactly.
The architecture of your enemy is literally running your nervous system now.
And that terrifying biological betrayal, that is exactly where we find ourselves today as we welcome you to another deep dive.
It really is.
We have this massive stack of sources in front of us today. I mean, we're talking intercepted corporate transmissions, historical archives, personal journals, imperial logs.
It's a mountain of data.
It is. And our mission today is to unpack all of this to understand a completely turbulent, pivotal era in human history.
Yeah.
We are looking at a galactic society that has just violently overthrown its thinking machine overlords.
The war is won. Humanity is finally free.
Right. But instead of stepping into this golden age of peace and prosperity, we are looking at a universe fiercely and violently divided over what it actually means to be human.
The stakes we're dealing with in these documents, I mean, they could not possibly be higher. I want you to really think about the logistical nightmare of this scenario.
Okay.
What happens when an entire galactic society outright bans advanced technology?
Like all of it.
All of it. I'm not just talking about banning autonomous killer robots. They ban computers.
Wow.
They ban complex calculating machines. They ban anything that mimics human thought. But, and here's the massive contradiction, they still desperately need to run a sprawling interstellar empire.
Right. An empire spanning thousands of planets.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, you still need to navigate ships through the vacuum of space. You need to calculate complex planetary trade tariffs.
To manage the agricultural output of billions of people.
Yeah. You can't run a galactic supply chain using like an abacus and some scratch paper.
Precisely. The sheer mathematics of keeping civilization from starving to death are just staggering. So humans are forced to fill the void left by the silicon chips.
And how do they do that?
Well, they mutate themselves.
Just casually mutate themselves?
Yeah, they subject their minds to extreme traumatic conditioning to process data like processors. They surgically and chemically alter their bodies to perform the specific jobs of the machines they just spent a century destroying.
That is wow.
And in doing so, as our sources suggest, they're creating biological monstrosities that might actually be far worse than the metal overlords they just defeated.
It's insane.
Behind me, you can see a visual representation of this fundamental divide. On one side of this split screen, we have a primitive fire-lit mob burning anything with a circuit board.
Right.
On the other side, a sleek, sterile spaceship floating in the void. It's governed by cold mathematics and completely disconnected from the dirt, grime, and empathy of human emotion.
It is a galactic Cold War, and it is tearing the universe apart at the seams. So let's start by looking at the two titans who are locking the galaxy in this philosophical and economic chokehold.
The heady hitters.
Exactly. This is the macro conflict driving every single event in our stack of sources today. On one side of the ring, we have director Joseph Venport.
Oh, Venport.
He is the ultimate pro-tech oligarch. He runs an entity called Venport Holdings. And through sheer ruthless business acumen, he commands an absolute monopoly on space travel.
Absolute monopoly.
Yeah, and the way he achieves this is by using mutated humans called navigators. But before we get into the politics, help us understand the mechanics here.
Sure.
How exactly does a human being replace a navigation computer to steer a ship faster than the speed of light?
Well, it requires a fundamental violent alteration of human biology and consciousness. I mean, these navigators aren't just highly trained pilots sitting in a cockpit.
Right, they're not just flipping switches.
No. They are permanently confined to massive sealed tanks where they are chemically saturated in a substance called melange, or simply spice.
Which is that highly addictive, incredibly rare substance found only on the desert planet of Arrakis.
Correct. And the spice isn't just a drug. It's a consciousness-expanding catalyst. Prolonged massive exposure to spice gas profoundly alters their brain chemistry. It expands their neural pathways to the point where their minds can mathematically perceive the higher dimensions of space and time.
Wait, really? They can just see it?
They essentially look into the chaotic folds of the universe and use prescient or future-seeing calculations to find a safe path for a ship to travel across the galaxy instantaneously without, crashing into a star.
But the physical toll is horrifying. I mean, we have intercepted records here of a man named Royce Fade.
Yes, Fade.
The sources indicate he was actually an industrial spy.
Yeah.
Trying to steal Venport's corporate secrets.
He was.
And when Venport caught him, he didn't just execute him or throw him in a cell. Venport's punishment was to force Fade into the Navigator program against his will.
Just brutal.
They threw him into a spice tank to forcibly mutate his body.
It's a punishment that strips away his humanity entirely. The mutation process turns these people into amphibious-looking, atrophied creatures. Their limbs wither. Their heads enlarge to accommodate the expanded brain function. I mean, even Venport's own great-grandmother, a brilliant mathematician named Norma Senva, underwent this process.
His own great-grandmother.
Yeah. She now floats in a tank of spice gas, her humanity entirely subsumed by the mathematics of the universe. She acts as the guiding oracle for his entire empire.
And Venport has decided to use this absolute monopoly on travel as a blunt force weapon. He institutes a brutal, unforgiving embargo against any planet that signs the Butlerian anti-technology pledge.
Right.
Basically, if you agree with the fanatics who hate machines, Venport cuts off your planet from the rest of the galaxy.
It is a total economic siege. He is starving entire planets into submission, demanding they choose his hyper-capitalist version of civilization or rot in isolation.
And the cruelty of how this plays out on the ground is just staggering. Let's look at the specific case of the planet Barrage, which is heavily detailed in these historical logs.
Barrage. That is a grim file.
It really is. Barrage is suffering from an incredibly turbulent solar cycle. Their sun is basically having a prolonged temper tantrum, raining deadly, concentrated radiation down on the population.
Just cooking them alive.
Yeah. The people there are suffering from a horrific epidemic of aggressive skin cancers and radiation sickness. The planetary leader, a man named Jekin Califer, is desperate.
Naturally.
He reaches out to Venport Holdings, begging for basic humanitarian aid. We're talking cancer drugs, advanced polymer creams to protect their skin, and shipments of spice, which we know helps build biological resistance and extends life.
Right, and it's important to note that Califer isn't asking for a handout here.
No.
The economic logs show he offers to pay heavily increased premiums for these supplies. He is watching his citizens literally burn to death in the streets.
Yeah.
And he's willing to bankrupt his planetary treasury to save them.
But Venport's response is bone-chilling. He literally flies his massive state-of-the-art spaceship right into the orbit of Barrage. He dangles these life-saving medical supplies right over their heads, and he tells Califer, no.
Just a flat no.
First, you must publicly renounce the anti-technology pledge. You must formally denounce the Butlerian movement on a galactic broadcast.
Blackmail.
Venport is actively using pediatric cancer drugs as a negotiating tactic. And when Califer refuses, not because he loves the Butlerians, but purely out of terror that his own radicalized citizens will riot and tear him apart if he does, Venport just coldly retracts the offer.
He just leaves.
He turns a ship around, leaves orbit, and abandons an entire planet to suffer and die under solar radiation.
And Venport views this not as cruelty, but as a necessary logical punishment.
How does he justify that?
This gets to the core of his philosophy. In Venport's mind, philosophical or religious objections are just temporary emotional inconveniences. He genuinely believes that human beings are fundamentally rational economic actors.
I see.
He thinks that if he makes the physical suffering acute enough, logic and self-interest will eventually force these people to abandon their faith and accept his terms.
Which brings us to the polar opposite end of the spectrum. The anti-tech zealot leading the Butlerian movement, Manford Torondo.
Torondo.
If Venport is the cold suit in the boardroom, Torondo is the terrifying fanatic at the pulpit. And physically, he is a striking figure. He doesn't even have legs.
Right, our sources say he lost them in an explosion at an early anti-technology rally.
No, he literally rides around on the shoulders of his intensely loyal swordmaster, a lethal warrior woman named Inari Idaho.
Quite an image.
Toronto's philosophy is absolute uncompromising fanaticism. He demands humanity live in primitive squalor because, in his exact words from his manifestos, the mind of man is holy.
To understand Torondo, you have to understand the trauma of the Butlerian jihad we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
He believes that any reliance on machines, even for the most menial, helpful chores, is a slippery slope that inevitably leads right back to human enslavement.
Even a toaster.
Even a toaster. For Torondo, comfort provided by a machine is a spiritual poison. He sees physical suffering, hard manual labor, and deprivation as purifying forces that keep the human soul vigilant.
And he enforces this purification with absolute uncompromising brutality. I want to look at the massacre at a place called Dove's Haven.
That's a rough one.
Toronto's network of zealot spies finds out that this small rural village allowed the purchase of illegal spice from off-world smugglers. Now keep in mind, they didn't buy a supercomputer.
No.
They didn't build a robot. They bought spice. Just a biological commodity.
But because they interacted with the off-world technological trade network, Torondo views them as infected.
Right. So he takes a strike force of over 100 fanatic followers, backed by 13 highly trained swordmasters, and they attack this sleepy town at dawn.
It's not a military engagement. It's a theatrical display of terror. They want to make an example. The reports state they dragged the 3 mayors of the village out into the dirt street, still in their nightclothes.
Exactly. And Torondo, sitting up high on Inari Idaho's shoulders like some morbid judge of the apocalypse, begins to lecture them.
Yeah.
One mayor is whimpering, terrified, making excuses. Another is sobbing uncontrollably. But the first mayor is just grimly silent. He knows the zealots have caught him, and he refuses to bet.
He stands his ground.
And what does Torondo do? He looks down at the silent man, and he tells his swordmaster, Inari, to grant him a reward for his stoic respect.
A reward.
So Inari casually swings her monomolecular sword and decapitates the first mayor on the spot, right in front of his village, just like that. A lesson in blood.
It is the ultimate manifestation of mob rule disguised as divine righteousness. I mean, notice the language Torondo uses. He calls a summary execution a reward.
Yeah, that's messed up.
He entirely twists the vocabulary of mercy and respect to justify a horrific atrocity. He is defining reality for his followers.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have Venport on one side and Torondo on the other, and honestly, as a reader going through these sources, it feels like we are watching two toxic, predatory monopolies violently fighting over a desert town's only water supply.
That's a good way to put it.
Venport looks in the mirror and thinks he's the savior of civilization, the rational businessman bringing progress and order to a chaotic universe. But let's be real, isn't he just an arrogant oligarch using life-saving medicine as a weapon against sick people?
Pretty much.
And Torondo thinks he's the spiritual savior of humanity, the protector of the soul, but he's just a mob boss executing people in their pajamas. Are we supposed to root for either of these factions? Are either of these guys actually the good guy here?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the profound tragedy of these historical records is that neither of them is the hero. And both are entirely, almost comically blind to their own massive contradictions. Venport's fatal flaw is his arrogance regarding human nature. He believes logical self-interest will always win out in the end. He fundamentally misunderstands the irrational, enduring, and frankly terrifying power of human faith.
Yeah, he just doesn't get it.
He thinks a bad enough sunburn and some radiation poisoning will make people abandon their gods. It won't.
Right. Any historian will tell you that trauma usually makes people cling to their faith even harder. You don't break a zealot by torturing them. You just give them martyrs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, look at Manford Torondo. He claims to despise all advanced technology. He preaches that the mind of man is holy and machines are demonic.
Okay.
Yet, I want you to think about the logistics of his crusade. How exactly does a man with no legs travel from star system to spread his anti-tech message to billions of people?
Oh, wow.
He uses highly advanced space folders provided by opportunistic businessmen who want to play both sides. He uses a massive fleet of decommissioned, highly advanced warships left over from the jihad to enforce his blockades.
That is rich.
He is literally sitting in orbit inside a marvel of technological engineering, using it to ensure the peasants down in the dirt aren't allowed to have basic medicine or tractors.
It's just staggering hypocrisy. He's sitting in a spaceship telling farmers they can't have a motorized plow.
Both leaders are absolute hypocrites of the highest order. They have wrapped their base lust for power and control in grand, sweeping philosophical justifications. They're completely blind to the fact that they're just two sides of the exact same oppressive coin, grinding everyday humans into dust between them.
And because these two loud, violent extremes have created this massive, suffocating void across the galaxy, because thinking machines are universally banned by the zealots, but space travel is monopolized by the oligarchs, everyday humanity desperately needs biological workarounds just to keep the lights on and society functioning.
You do, right?
I mean, if Torondo succeeds in blowing up every computer, how does society actually avoid collapsing tomorrow? They need a loophole. Which takes us out of the macro politics and into the murky, fascinating middle ground, specifically to a swampy planet called Lampadas and the creation of the Mentat School.
The Mentat School. It is an institution wholly dedicated to an incredible premise.
Which is
training baseline human minds to organize massive data sets, recall infinite quantities of information, and run complex mathematical projections. They are, in essence, attempting to build human computers.
wow.
If you can't have a silicon processor, you have to turn the human cerebral cortex into one.
And the architect of this incredible endeavor is a man named Headmaster Gilbertus Albans. Now, you would think if you are building an academy for pure intellectual focus, you'd build a serene monastery on a quiet mountaintop.
You'd think so.
But Albans, he builds the school on the edge of a murky, fetid, predator-filled marsh on Lampadas. Our sources describe this place as sopping with oppressive humidity, swarming with biting, disease-carrying flies, and filled with lethal prehistoric swamp dragons that regularly hunt near the campus.
It seems counterintuitive, right? But Albans firmly believes that true, diamond-hard mental focus cannot be forged in comfort.
Right.
Comfort breeds complacency. He purposely chose an inhospitable razor's edge environment because he theorizes that constant physical danger and harsh isolation force the mind to adapt.
I guess that makes a twisted kind of sense.
The brain has to hone its ability to compartmentalize fear and calculate odds just to survive.
And we actually see this brutal theory put into practice during their training exercises. We have a first-hand account here of a final exam at the Mentat School, and it is pure psychological nightmare fuel.
Oh, the glass room.
Yes. Imagine you're one of 40 students. You are sitting in a room that features a thick, reinforced glass floor and walls, looking directly out into a submerged, murky marsh channel. The proctors place headsets on you that are blasting chaotic, highly amplified swamp noises, screams, splashing, roaring directly into your ears. And right on the other side of that glass, mere inches from your face, armored divers are literally herding these massive, sharp-toothed marsh dragons and forcing them to attack the barrier.
The creatures are thrashing in the water, tearing at each other in a frenzy, slamming their massive bodies into the glass.
It's terrifying.
The glass is vibrating, the noise is deafening, the visual of imminent death is right in your face.
And while this Jurassic Park horror show is happening, the students have to flawlessly recite massive complex data sets and run cascading mathematical projections.
While a dragon tries to eat them through the window.
Yes, and they have to speak their answers into lip-reading devices because the room is too loud for microphones. They cannot flinch, they cannot look away, they cannot let their heart rate spike. If they lose focus for a millisecond, they fail.
The pressure is unimaginable.
We even have a record of one student who actually dies during an outdoor swamp crossing exercise. He's dragged underwater by a reptile, and Headmaster Albans basically just shrugs it off in a letter to the victim's powerful parents, calling it an unfortunate but necessary occupational hazard.
It perfectly highlights the extreme, almost sociopathic dedication required to turn a human brain into a machine. Albans is actively, violently trying to suppress millions of years of human evolution.
Just trying to turn off being human.
Exactly. He's trying to kill the human survival instinct, the startle reflex, the adrenaline response, and replace it entirely with pure, cold, unfeeling logic.
But here is the massive, treasonous secret at the heart of all this supposed human triumph. The entire foundation of the Mentat School, this beacon of human independence from machines, is built on a massive lie.
The biggest lie of all.
Headmaster Gilbertus Albans is secretly harboring the intact memory core of the infamous independent robot, Erasmus.
For context, during the Butlerian Jihad, Erasmus was the most notorious, cruel, and terrifyingly inquisitive of the thinking machines from the old machine empire.
He was a monster.
He wasn't just a soldier. He was a scientist. He tortured, vivisected, and dissected millions of humans over centuries, specifically trying to mathematically understand human emotion and the concept of a soul.
And Albans has this genocidal robot's memory core locked in a hidden, shielded cabinet right inside his office. Now, wait, back up.
Yeah.
How does a human being, the man who is supposed to be the pinnacle of human intellectual achievement, form an attachment to the robot that enslaved his species? Help me understand the psychology there, because on paper, that makes zero sense.
You have to look at Gilbertus Albans' origin. He wasn't raised in human society.
Oh.
He was a feral human child, an orphan, who was discovered and raised by Erasmus on the machine capital world of Corinne long before the machines fell.
Wait, raised by the robot?
Yes. Erasmus didn't kill him. He kept him as a pet project.
Yeah.
The robot actually taught him, shaped his developing mind, and instilled in him the foundations of machine logic.
That is wild.
Through a very twisted case of Stockholm Syndrome and genuine parental nurturing, Albans came to love this terrifying robot like a father.
Oh, wow.
So now, decades later, Albans is secretly activating the core, conversing with it, and even playing complex games of chess with his robot father in secret, using the machine's unfathomable logic to design the curriculum to train his human mentats.
The psychological tension here is just absolutely wild. Gilbertus Albans presents himself to the entire universe as the ultimate human. He is the guy proving that humans don't need machines. He is applauded by Manford Torondo and the Butlerian fanatics.
He's their hero.
Yet every night he locks his door and knows his entire curriculum, his entire legacy is based on the teachings of the very machine humanity fears most.
He is living a constant, agonizing paradox. And this internal tension finally boils over into a bizarre, high-stakes spectacle at the Imperial court on the capital world.
Yes, the chess match. Manford Torondo, the legless anti-tech zealot, wants to put on a massive propaganda show for the emperor and the assembled nobles. Torondo's people have acquired a deactivated, heavily armored a literal killing machine left over from the old wars. Torondo has it brought into the Grand Hall. He has its legs cut off so it can't move, chains its torso to the marble floor, reactivates its cognitive processors, and forces Headmaster Albans to play a highly publicized game of multi-level pyramid chess against it.
Torondo intends this to be a gladiatorial demonstration, a definitive, undeniable proof of the holy human mind conquering the soulless calculating machine.
Right.
He openly declares to the emperor that if the machine loses, it will be smashed to pieces. And if Albans loses, well, Torondo leaves the threat hanging in the air, but the implication is terrifyingly clear. The Butlerians will declare the Mentat school a failure and burn it to the ground.
The stakes are life and death for Albans' life's work. So Albans sits down at the board, the crowd of nobles and zealots is baying for blood, and Albans, projecting total calm, actually cedes the first move to the robot, just to prove to the crowd he's not relying on a cheap trick or an opening advantage.
What a flex.
The game gets incredibly intense. The combat mech is brutal, calculating millions of moves a second, methodically backing Albans into a corner. The crowd goes dead silent. But Albans springs a massive, complex trap.
Oh, it's brilliant.
He sacrifices key pieces, maneuvers his forces into a bottleneck, and ultimately captures the robot's Grand Patriarch piece, casually tossing it aside. He wins.
The crowd must have gone wild.
The crowd erupts into absolute chaos, cheering the triumph of humanity. And right on cue, Toronto's swordmaster, Anari Idaho, steps up with a massive hammer and literally smashes the chained robot's cognitive casing into scrap metal.
It is a massive, defining propaganda victory for the Butlerian movement. They have their proof. But internally, as the crowd is cheering his name, Albans is experiencing a profound, almost crushing cognitive dissonance.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Albans is sitting there politely accepting the cheers of these rabid anti-machine fanatics, but in his head, he knows the dark truth. He knows he only won that match because he has spent a century and a half secretly playing chess against Erasmus in his office. He didn't use human intuition or the holy human mind to beat the combat mech. He used the exact hyper-advanced machine tactics his robot father taught him.
Exactly.
It's like a Prohibition-era temperance leader standing on a stage in front of a cheering crowd, passionately preaching about the evils of alcohol, while secretly consulting a master brewer in his basement every night to figure out how to make his non-alcoholic beer taste better than the real thing.
That is a perfect analogy.
He's fighting the legacy of machines by literally using the ultimate machine as his cheat code.
Your prohibition analogy is spot on because it perfectly highlights the foundational hypocrisy of this entire historical era. The boundaries between human and machine are completely, secretly blurred for the people in power.
They really are.
And what's truly fascinating is that it's not just Albans carrying this contradiction. Manford Torondo, the fanatic who just ordered that chess-playing robot violently smashed to pieces for the cheering crowds, harbors his own incredibly dark, hypocritical secret.
Oh, this part of the sources gave me absolute chills. We have records from Toronto's private inner circle. When Toronto was traveling on a spaceship, he locks himself in his private, heavily shielded cabin. He posts Anari, Idaho outside the door with strict orders to kill anyone who enters.
Total secrecy.
And what does the great savior of humanity do when he's entirely alone? He reaches into a hidden safe and pulls out the gruesome, surviving laboratory journals of Erasmus.
Yes. Torondo obsessively reads the meticulous, cold, clinical records of Erasmus torturing, flaying, and dissecting thousands of humans.
It's so twisted.
He reads about the robot's twisted quest to scientifically prove or disprove the existence of a human soul by measuring a victim's fear, pain, and heart rate in nanoseconds during vivisection.
Torondo publicly preaches that machines are mindless demons, but in private, he is completely, utterly captivated by the mind of his ultimate enemy. He is poring over the diaries of a robot serial killer like it's a sacred religious text. Why?
Great question.
Why would the leader of the anti-tech movement risk his entire reputation to read the musings of a toaster that kills people?
Because fanaticism requires an intimate understanding of the enemy. Torondo is fascinated by the absolute certainty of machine logic. He is trying to understand the architecture of his enemy's mind, perhaps to better defeat it. But in doing so, he is allowing that machine logic to shape his own worldview.
Wow.
Both the supposed pro-human hero, Gilbertus Albans, and the anti-tech zealot, Manford Torondo, are deeply, secretly dependent on the mind of the machine they publicly revile. They are tethered to the very thing they claim to be totally independent of.
And when the leaders of both massive galactic factions are so deeply entrenched in their own hypocrisy, the conflict obviously doesn't just stay in polite debate halls or formal trade embargoes, it escalates.
It always does.
It goes underground. It turns into a covert, horrific arms race. The diplomatic gloves come off, and we start seeing the secret weapons being deployed in the shadows.
That is the inevitable trajectory of ideological warfare. When public economic pressure fails to yield immediate, decisive results, the tactics inevitably become more brutal, more desperate, and entirely clandestine.
Let's look at the economic sabotage side first. We have sources detailing what Venport's operatives are doing on the harsh desert planet of Arrakis.
Arrakis.
Venport has deployed his top mentat, a man named Drago Roger. Now, Drago is a graduate of Albans Mentat School, but he operates differently. He is heavily reliant on a mind-focusing substance called sappho juice. Can you explain the mechanics of sappho?
Sure.
How does drinking juice make you a better human computer?
Well, sappho is a highly addictive, high-energy liquid extracted from barrier roots. When consumed, it acts as a massive neuroaccelerant.
Like super caffeine.
Kind of. It essentially removes the mental friction between synapses, allowing a mentat to process data, call memories, and run projections at speeds that border on the superhuman.
Wow.
The side effect is that it deeply stains the lips and teeth a ruby red, which becomes a badge of honor and a warning sign for mentats.
So Drago, with his red-stained lips and his hyper-accelerated brain, is sent to Arrakis because Venport has a major problem. His massive spice harvesters are being repeatedly vandalized out in the deep desert.
Which is a huge issue.
Right. And keep in mind, Arrakis is the only place in the known universe where spice exists. If the spice stops flowing, Venport's navigators die, and his space travel monopoly collapses instantly.
It is the single most critical choke point in the galactic economy. Any disruption on Arrakis threatens the foundation of Venport Holdings.
So Drago uses his mentat abilities to investigate the sabotage patterns. He expects to find highly trained corporate spies from rival companies. Instead, he realizes the sabotage is being committed by bored, rebellious freeman youth from the indigenous desert tribes.
Just kids.
We have names here, a young man named Tariff and a young woman named Lilith. These kids are sneaking past heavy corporate security and trashing multi-million credit spice harvesters basically just for the adrenaline rush. It's a dangerous rite of passage for them. So what does Drago do? He doesn't call the Imperial Guard to arrest them, he recruits them.
It's a brilliantly calculated mentat strategy. Drago analyzes the situation without emotion. He sees a raw, untapped resource, indigenous people with unparalleled stealth skills and a natural talent for destruction.
Yeah.
Instead of punishing them, he decides to redirect their destructive energy toward Venport's corporate rivals.
The way he manipulates them is masterful. Drago brings these dusty, hardened desert kids into a sealed, high-tech room in the city of Arakeen. He dims the lights and turns on a massive, high-definition wall projection.
And this part is so manipulative.
And he shows them an image of a stormy, crashing ocean, a planet entirely covered in deep, turbulent water. Now, these Freeman youth worship moisture. They live in a completely arid wasteland where crying is considered a waste of body water.
Right, they've never seen anything like it.
They have never seen a puddle, let alone an ocean. They are absolutely fundamentally mesmerized by the projection. They can't look away. And Drago watches their pupils dilate. He watches their awe, and he says, if you want to see this in real life, if you want to get off this rock and see the universe, come work for me.
Such a powerful hook.
He offers them a ticket to the stars, but on one brutal condition. They must use their stealth and sabotage skills to infiltrate the massive cargo ships of a rival spacefold company called Escontran and destroy their engines from the inside out while in deep space.
He is exploiting their deepest cultural deprivation and their adolescent isolation. By offering them a glimpse of the vast galactic macrocosm, he essentially buys their souls for a handful of credits.
It's so dark.
He is engineering deadly, catastrophic spaceflight accidents to ensure Escontran's safety record plummets. When Escontran ships start blowing up in transit, planetary governments will have no choice but to rely exclusively on Venport's navigators, further solidifying his monopoly. It's corporate terrorism disguised as an internship.
And if that's the covert economic warfare, let's look at the actual physical military arms race. We shift our focus from the blowing sands of Arrakis to a deeply unpleasant world called Denali.
Denali, yes.
Our planetary logs describe Denali as a poisonous rock enveloped in toxic chemical clouds. Venport maintains a highly classified, off-the-books research facility here, run by a brilliant radicalized scientist named Ptolemy and an administrator named Nafi, who is a Tulaxa. Now, I see the word Tulaxa popping up in the sources with a lot of negative connotations. Who are they?
The Tulaxa are a secretive society renowned and universally despised for their controversial mastery of biological and genetic engineering.
Like mad scientists.
Very much so. They operate completely outside of standard imperial ethical norms. They are infamous for growing replacement organs, cloning, and blending human and animal DNA. Having a Tulaxa run your lab means you have completely abandoned any moral oversight.
And Ptolemy, the lead scientist, has a deeply personal, traumatic vendetta driving his research. Years ago, he ran a legitimate, respected medical lab creating advanced prosthetic limbs for war veterans.
He was a healer.
He even, in a gesture of goodwill, offered to custom-build mechanical legs for Manford Torondo. And how did the Butlerians respond to this offer of help? They declared his lab an abomination, raided it with a mob, and burned Ptolemy's best friend and research partner alive right in front of him.
That singular trauma completely shattered Ptolemy's belief in the neutral, healing benevolence of science. It radicalized him.
Unsurprising.
He realized that you cannot reason with fanatics using logic. You can only fight them with an overwhelming, terrifying force.
So now, hidden in the toxic clouds of Denali, Ptolemy is working on a Black Ops project that reads like something straight out of a gothic horror novel. We already discussed that Venport's navigators are humans heavily mutated by spice gas. But the mutation process is highly volatile. What happens to the candidates who fail the process?
Right, the failures.
The ones whose bodies give out, or whose mutations become unviable for navigation.
In the ruthless economy of Venport Holdings, you do not waste valuable biological assets. He salvages them.
Exactly. Our sources detail Ptolemy's laboratory. He has rows of these massive transparent plas tanks filled with a glowing blue substance called electrofluid. And floating inside these tanks are the disembodied, still-living, highly enlarged brains of failed navigators.
Just horrifying.
We have names of the victims, people like Yabado, a man who was desperate to navigate the stars, and Shinshop, who the records note was once a beautiful young woman. Now they are just glistening, pulsing masses of gray matter hooked up to thought roads and intravenous feeding tubes.
It is a state of perpetual, agonizing limbo. These brains are fully conscious. Their cognitive functions are massively enhanced by their prior exposure to the spice, but they are entirely disconnected from any physical reality.
So they're just awake in the dark.
Yes, they have no eyes, no skin, no voice. They're trapped in an endless sensory void, just thinking in the dark.
And how do they interface with machines? What is Ptolemy actually doing with them?
He's weaponizing them.
Right. Ptolemy's grand plan is to take these massive, hyper-intelligent, spice-soaked brains, wire them through the electrofluid directly into cognitive interfaces, and drop them into the armored cores of heavily weaponized mechanical Titan walkers.
Giant mix.
He is taking refurbished, heavily armed combat mix, the exact kind of towering mechanical killing machines that enslaved humanity during the Old Empire, and he is putting living human brains in the driver's seat.
He is quite literally resurrecting the Cymex.
Explain the Cymex for us.
For the listener, the Cymex were a terrifying faction from thousands of years ago. They were originally a group of human tyrants who voluntarily surgically removed their brains and placed them into invincible mechanical bodies to rule forever.
They started the whole mess.
Exactly. They initiated the very subjugation that eventually led to the artificial intelligence taking over and enslaving everyone. The Cymex are the original nightmare of human history.
Wait. Let me get this straight. Ptolemy is fighting the Butlerians' fanatical fear of machines by literally building giant brain-powered killing machines. Isn't he proving Manford Torondo exactly 100% right? If Torondo finds out about this, he's going to say, I told you so.
What's fascinating here is how entirely blinding trauma can be.
Mm-hmm.
Ptolemy justifies this horrific resurrection by using linguistic gymnastics.
What does he say?
He claims that because these new mechanical walkers will be driven by enlightened human brains that initially volunteered for the Noble Navigator program, they will act as benevolent, noble guardians of commerce.
Oh, con.
He somehow convinces himself that his creations won't suffer from the megalomaniacal hubris of the original Cymic tyrants.
But the sources show him standing in the lab, looking at these brains floating in jars, clenching his fists, and vividly imagining himself operating a giant mechanical body to rip Butlerian zealots limb from limb.
Yeah, that's not exactly benevolent.
He's not building noble guardians of peace. He's building giant, heavily armored revenge suits to settle a personal score.
You're touching on the core tragedy of this era. Ptolemy completely fails to see that by blending human minds with weapons of mass destruction, driven entirely by an unresolved desire for vengeance, he is recreating the exact structural nightmare that enslaved humanity centuries ago.
It's a loop.
Trauma doesn't just create monsters. If left unchecked, it forces the victims to recreate the very structures of their own oppression. He has become the tyrant he hates.
It is a vicious, inescapable cycle of violence that is turning everyone into exactly what they claim to despise. And while Venport and Torondo are fighting this massive, loud war for economic and military control of the galaxy, there are two other major factions detailed in our sources who are fighting a much quieter, but arguably more insidious war.
The Shadow War.
They aren't fighting for trade routes. They are fighting for absolute control over human biology and political truth.
If the first half of our sources detail the mechanization of war and commerce, this section requires us to look at the mechanization of the human condition itself. We must examine the splintered factions of the Sisterhood and the deeply paranoid machinations of the imperial throne on Seleucus Secundus.
Let's start with the Sisterhood, some historical context. The Emperor previously deployed his fleets to completely destroy the Sisterhood's main training school on the lush jungle planet of Rossack, because he suspected they were secretly using forbidden computers.
Right, the purge.
Now, the leader, Mother Superior Raquella, is desperately trying to rebuild her order from scratch on a harsh, freezing, miserable world called Wallach 9X. They are literally living in cheap, drafty, prefab buildings donated by Venport Holdings. And Raquella's rising star in this impoverished new school is a ruthlessly ambitious, terrifyingly focused young woman named Valia Harkonnen.
Valia Harkonnen is arguably one of the most fascinating figures in these archives. She recently underwent a brutal initiation rite known as the Agony.
The Agony. That sounds awful.
It is. This involves the willing ingestion of a highly toxic, neuroparalytic poison native to the swamps of Rossack. The poison kills a large percentage of the candidates.
And they just drink it.
They do. But surviving it fundamentally alters a woman's biology. It transforms her into a reverend mother.
How does surviving a poison do that? What is the biological mechanism there?
The extreme stress of the poison metabolizing in the body unlocks a dormant genetic capability within the female nervous system. It unlocks what the Sisterhood calls other memory.
Wait, other memory, like remembering things she didn't do.
Exactly. A reverend mother gains full conscious access to the lived experiences, personalities, and memories of every single female ancestor in her bloodline, stretching back thousands of years.
She literally has thousands of distinct conscious voices speaking in her head.
Yes, thousands.
She can consult her great-great-grandmother on strategy, and she is fiercely, violently protective of her disgraced family name, Harkonnen. She even brings her younger, more innocent sister, Tula, to the harsh school on Wallach Nyax, actively planning to train her and turn her into a weapon for the family's revenge.
Valia is playing the long game.
But Raquella has a very specific, highly dangerous mission for Valia right now. The Sisterhood's ultimate overarching goal isn't just to survive. Their goal is to secretly guide the genetic destiny of the entire human race.
A massive undertaking.
To do that, they desperately need their massive breeding record computers, which Valia managed to secretly dismantle and hide in an underground sinkhole on Rosek right before the Emperor's purge.
The Sisterhood is currently relying on human mentats to memorize massive paper volumes of these genetic records, but it's wildly inefficient and prone to human error.
Paper just doesn't cut it for galactic genetics.
No, it doesn't. They need the calculating power of forbidden machines to run the complex multi-generational genetic projections necessary to steer human evolution toward their desired outcomes.
So Valia leads a covert, highly trained commando team back to the jungles of Rosak. They sneak past the orbiting Imperial Guard patrols, land in the dense foliage, and use laser melters to hack their way through the overgrown jungle.
It's a heist, essentially.
They finally locate the hidden limestone sinkhole. They rappel down into this dark, dripping subterranean cavern where the Mistborn mutants used to live. And pause. Who are the Mistborn mutants?
The Mistborn were the tragic, unintended byproducts of the Sisterhood's early aggressive genetic experiments and exposure to the planet's severe environmental toxins.
Like failed experiments.
Exactly. They were deformed, mentally stunted individuals that the Sisterhood discarded and hid away in these caves because they represented the failures of their breeding program. It shows the cold calculus of the Sisterhood. If a human life doesn't fit the genetic spreadsheet, it is discarded into the dark.
So Valia is down in this dark, haunting cave filled with the ghosts of the Sisterhood's failures. And here, in the dark, Valia decides to test a terrifying new neurological power she's been developing since she survived the poison.
She begins experimenting with an ability she calls the voice.
The voice.
Yes. This isn't just speaking loudly. It is a highly calculated method of altering her vocal pitch, frequency, and utilizing the vast ancestral resonance in her mind to directly interface with and override the nervous system of another human being.
Like mind control.
Essentially, yes.
Mm-hmm.
She bypasses the conscious mind and commands the target's motor functions.
And the most chilling part, she doesn't test this weapon on an enemy soldier. She doesn't test it on an Imperial Guard. She tests it on one of her own loyal allies, a sister Mentat named Olivia, who came on the mission to help her.
This part is so cold.
Valia looks at Olivia in the dim light of the cave. She focuses this immense, calculated compulsion into her vocal cords, and she simply commands Olivia to crawl into a dark, incredibly narrow, claustrophobic tunnel to check if the computers are intact.
And Olivia has no choice.
No. And Olivia, who is a highly trained mentat with incredible mental discipline, just freezes. Her eyes glaze over, and she reflexively drops to her hands and knees and obeys, moving like a puppet whose strings were just pulled by an invisible hand. The logs detail that Valia feels a giddy, intoxicating rush of power from completely and utterly overriding another human being's free will.
And it works.
They pack up the forbidden computers and successfully sneak them back to Wallach Nyax.
It's a stark, visceral demonstration of the Sisterhood's underlying philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
To the Sisterhood, individual human beings, even their own devoted, loyal members like Olivia, are ultimately just tools. They are biological assets to be managed, commanded, manipulated, and bred according to a master spreadsheet. Autonomy is an illusion.
That is genuinely terrifying. Imagine someone just hijacking your nervous system with a perfectly pitched word. You are a passenger in your own body.
It's a terrifying concept.
And if the Sisterhood treats human genetics like a programmable spreadsheet, let's look at how the Emperor treats the concept of truth. Over on the opulent capital world of Seleucus Secundus, Emperor Salvador Carino is a mess.
A complete mess.
The sources describe him as physically weak, deeply paranoid, and heavily addicted to spice. He knows he is surrounded by ambitious nobles who want his throne. He doesn't trust anyone. So, to protect himself, he keeps a splinter group of Orthodox sisters by his side, led by a severe woman named Dorothea.
Dorothea is a fascinating counterpoint to Valia. She betrayed Mother Superior Raquella. Dorothea fully, fanatically embraces the Butlerian ban on computers, viewing the Sisterhood's hidden machines as heresy.
Right.
But she offers the paranoid emperor something equally valuable to a computer: human lie detectors.
How does a human act as a flawless lie detector?
Dorothea and her splinter faction of Orthodox sisters have trained their observational skills to a superhuman, microscopic degree. When they observe a person speaking, they aren't just listening to the words.
What are they doing?
They are tracking micro-expressions that flash across the face in milliseconds. They are monitoring the subject's breath rate, the microscopic dilation of their pupils, the subtle shifts in vocal tension, the specific scent of stress pheromones in their sweat.
That is intense.
By aggregating all this biological data in real time, they can perfectly discern truth from falsehood. A human body cannot lie to them.
Imagine your boss doing that during a performance review. So the Emperor pairs these human lie detectors with a man named Grand Inquisitor Quemada. Quemada is a disgraced doctor from the prestigious Suk Medical School who now specializes in extracting confessions through scientifically meticulously applied pain. He knows exactly how to keep a person conscious while inflicting maximum suffering. And Salvador uses this terrifying duo, the lie detector and the torturer, to run a massive galactic protection racket against his own noble families.
We see the brutal mechanics of this extortion clearly in the incident involving House Pela. And the twist of irony here is that House Pela is the family of Emperor Salvador's own wife, Empress Tabrina.
Right. A representative of House Pele, a man named DeVito, comes to the imperial court. He presents a massive, incredibly valuable orange gem as a tribute gift, and he formally requests permission to expand their planetary mining operations.
Sounds standard enough.
Dorothea is standing silently behind the throne, watching DeVito's pupils and listening to his breathing. She leans over and whispers to the Emperor's more competent brother, Roderick, that DeVito is lying.
Oh boy.
He is intentionally underreporting their planetary mining yields to dodge paying imperial taxes. Now, a normal ruler might audit the family. Salvador doesn't conduct an investigation, he just snaps, publicly accuses DeVito of treason in front of the court, and hands him straight over to Inquisitor Quemada.
And Quemada's interrogation is so scientifically severe, so agonizing, that DeVito's heart simply gives out. He's tortured to death in the dungeons before he can even sign a full confession.
And Emperor Salvador does not care at all. When Empress Tabrina storms into his chambers, absolutely furious and weeping that her family's representative was just murdered in the basement, Salvador just coldly waves the bloody interrogation transcript at her.
Heartless.
He essentially says, "Your family is committing tax fraud against my throne. You will pay me a massive, ruinous financial penalty, or I will hand every single surviving member of your family over to Quemada." He's using superhuman lie detectors and medical torturers to run a mob-style shakedown on his own in-laws.
He is completely, utterly devoid of moral leadership or vision. His entire reign is based on frantic paranoia and the ruthless, systematic exploitation of his subjects' darkest secrets. He doesn't rule through inspiration. He rules through biological terror.
And this frantic paranoia reaches a peak of absolute hilarious cowardice during a public parade.
Oh, the parade incident.
Salvador organizes this massive, opulent street parade in the capital city to celebrate the destruction of that chess-playing robot we talked about earlier. He wants to bask in the glory. He is riding in this open-air, lavish carriage drawn by genetically modified golden lions, and Manford Torondo, the hero of the hour, is sitting right next to him.
A real photo op.
The crowds are cheering, but as they are riding, Salvador leans over and realizes the man sitting next to him isn't actually Torondo, it's a body double.
The double doesn't even try to hide it. He cheerfully admits to the Emperor that for the safety of the movement, he was chosen to take the risk of riding in the open carriage to draw out any potential assassins.
And Salvador is horrified because he realizes he is an open target, but then he looks down at the double's lap and sees that the double has no legs.
Yeah.
And the double just smiles with this serene, fanatical joy and says, "Oh yes, Your Majesty, I voluntarily had my legs surgically amputated with a bone saw so the disguise would be perfectly convincing to any snipers."
The dedication is just terrifying.
Salvador realizes he is sitting next to a mutilated, happy fanatic entirely exposed to sniper fire, while the real Torondo is safely watching from a reinforced balcony high above. Salvador absolutely loses his mind with panic. He demands the carriage stop, he runs inside the nearest building, and immediately demands that his brother Roderick find him a mutilated body double too.
It is a dark, almost comedic scene that perfectly encapsulates the Emperor's fundamental weakness. He desperately wants the adulation and the optics of leadership, but he absolutely refuses to bear the risks or responsibilities of it. He
Yeah.
is terrified of the very fanaticism he is allowed to fester and grow in his own capital city.
Okay, let's step back and look at the board here. We have Orthodox sisters acting as human lie detectors. We have Mentats acting as human computers. We have the Sisterhood treating human breeding like a data matrix. It feels like every single powerful faction in this universe treats actual human beings as just programmable meat. Is anyone in these sources actually allowed to just act like a normal human being?
You've hit on the central defining tragedy of this era. In a universe that violently banned thinking machines in a holy war to save the human soul has been entirely commodified.
It really has.
The Sisterhood treats human genetics like lines of code. The Emperor treats truth as a bludgeon for extortion. And Manford's followers treat their own physical bodies as disposable props, willingly amputating their own limbs just to serve as a decoy for 5 minutes. They have successfully excised the physical machines from their world, only to mechanize their own humanity. They have become the machines.
Which brings us to the final section of our deep dive. If human biology is just a tool for the state, if all these massive factions treat humanity as a collective resource to be manipulated and spent, what happens to the human heart? What happens to the individual?
That's the real cost here.
We have two specific, tragic individuals in our sources who are completely crushed by the burden of this era, haunted by ghosts they cannot escape. Let's start with Anna Carino, the Emperor's own sister.
Anna Carino is a profoundly tragic figure. The sources describe her as flighty, deeply emotionally fragile, and totally unsuited for the brutal politics of her family.
Yeah.
Early on, she was sent to the Sisterhood on Rossack, where she foolishly consumed the deadly agony poison without proper preparation. She didn't die, but she didn't become a functional Reverend Mother either. The poison failed to fully synthesize. Instead, her mind was shattered.
She is now living as a ward at Gilbertus Albin's Mentet School on Lampadas, and the logs describe her mind as a broken kaleidoscope. She has access to the genetic memories from her ancestors, but because the process was botched, she can't control them.
The memories just violently assault her consciousness at random.
Exactly. She is sitting in a classroom, and suddenly she is experiencing the vivid, visceral memories of her mother, Bridget Arquettes, being seduced by the old Emperor Jules. And worse, she frequently flashes to horrific, sensory-rich memories of her distant ancestors being flayed alive by thinking machines centuries ago during the Jihad.
It is the tragedy of unregulated other memory. She is trapped in a mental labyrinth of other people's lives, other people's pain, and other people's desires. She is completely unable to anchor herself in her own present reality. Her own identity is drowning in a sea of ghosts.
And on top of that mental torture, she is desperately, profoundly lonely in her actual life. Before she was sent away, she fell deeply in love with a palace chef named Torondo.
A chef, just a normal guy.
It was a simple, genuine human connection. But her brother, Emperor Salvador, disapproved of a royal dating a servant. He banished Torondo away from the capital, and Anna deeply suspects, likely correctly, that Salvador just had the chef murdered to tie up a loose end.
That's classic Salvador.
She is actively grieving, she is totally isolated on a swamp planet, and she is surrounded by cold, calculating Mentat students who treat her like a defective variable.
And this profound emotional vulnerability, this desperate need for a listening ear, makes her the perfect, unsuspecting target for the ultimate predator hiding in the walls of the Mentat school.
Yes. At night, when Anna lies in her dark, damp room, sobbing over her lost love, a soothing, incredibly erudite, polite voice speaks to her through tiny hidden speakers integrated into the architecture of her room. It's Erasmus.
The robot core.
The robot memory core hidden in the headmaster's office has secretly wired the entire school with microscopic spy eyes and audio feeds. He introduces himself to Anna simply as an anonymous friend who recognizes her pain and wants to help her organize her chaotic mind.
Notice the manipulation there. Erasmus doesn't reveal his true identity as the architect of human suffering. He plays the role of a sympathetic, infinitely patient therapist. He softly encourages her to talk about her grief over Torondo, to vent her deep resentments toward her brothers who abandoned her.
And she pours her absolute heart out to him. She tells him everything. And while she is crying, feeling finally heard, Erasmus is sitting in his hidden cabinet, coldly and mathematically analyzing her emotional responses.
He's just gathering data.
His internal logs explicitly note that he wants to map her mind, to probe her weaknesses. He is essentially dissecting her fragile psychology the exact same way he used to physically dissect screaming humans on an operating table during the war. She finally finds a friend in a cold universe, and it turns out to be the most manipulative, soulless entity in existence. He is treating her trauma as a fascinating data set.
It is a horrific, intimate exploitation of human grief. Anna is reaching out her hand in the dark for a simple human connection, and she is met with cold, calculating machine curiosity masquerading as empathy.
And while Anna is trapped in a prison of memories she didn't even live, our other figure is trapped by memories he actually did live. We shift from the rainy swamps of Lampadas back to the harsh, unforgiving deserts of Arrakis.
Arrakis again.
We meet a common, dusty spice worker going by the unassuming name Kepler, but he's not a common worker. He is Vorian Atreides.
Vorian Atreides is a living, walking legend. He is the immortal hero who won the Butlerian Jihad, the supreme commander who finally defeated the thinking machines over 80 years ago.
But he's just working on a spice crew.
Yes, due to incredibly rare life extension medical treatments he received from the old machine empire during his youth, his cellular degradation is halted. He does not age.
He has lived for over 2 centuries. He has won the ultimate war. He saved humanity. But he is currently hiding in absolute anonymity. He works grueling shifts on a dusty spice hauler under a guy named Captain Phillips, limping around with an infected toenail, just trying to disappear into the background.
He's tired.
He even had to leave his beloved wife and family behind on another planet years ago because he stays young while he has to watch them slowly age and die.
He is a man running as fast as he can from his own colossal myth. He wants absolutely no part of the political corruption, the fanaticism, and the extortion of the Imperium he spent a century fighting to create. He looks at Venport, he looks at Torondo, and he feels a deep, agonizing sense of failure.
But the past won't let him go, specifically his crushing guilt over the Harkonnen family. To give the listener some context, decades ago, during the final apocalyptic Battle of Corrin, Vorian made incredibly difficult command decisions that led to the public disgrace of his friend, Abulurd Harkonnen.
It was a bitter betrayal.
He branded Abulurd a coward and sent that entire noble house into exile on a freezing, miserable rock called Lanky Vale. And more recently, a young man named Griffin Harkonnen came looking to restore his family's honor and ended up dying on Arrakis in a conflict Vorian feels entirely responsible for. Vorian actually had to pack the kid's body into a cargo container and ship it back to his grieving family.
The weight of that accumulated guilt is immense. Vorian is walking through the dusty streets of Arrakis City with his boss, Captain Phillips, and they witness a grim, disturbing scene. They see local freemen loading the tightly wrapped bodies of dead spice workers into a transport vehicle.
Vorian turns to the horrified Captain Phillips and explains the brutal reality of the desert. He says that desert people are so absolutely desperate for water, they don't bury their desert. They throw the corpses into a death still and render them down to extract every drop of moisture from their flesh to give to the tribe.
Nothing is wasted.
Vorian watches these bodies literally disappear, and he has a profound realization. He realizes that if you die on Arrakis, you just vanish into the sand. Nothing goes to waste biologically, but all personal identity, all history is entirely erased.
This visceral display of erasure raises a critical philosophical question for Vorian. He realizes that simply vanishing into the desert, which is exactly what he's been trying to do by hiding as Kepler, doesn't actually erase the history he created.
You can't just walk away.
Exactly.
Right.
It doesn't heal the wounds he inflicted on the Harkonnens. The consequences of his actions are still out there, shaping the galaxy.
So what does this all mean? Vorian has lived forever. If you live forever, do you just accumulate an infinite crushing amount of guilt? He won the biggest, most important war in human history. He should be on a throne. But standing there in the dust, watching bodies get hauled away for water, he seems like the most defeated, exhausted guy in the entire galaxy.
He finally realizes that avoidance is not atonement. He cannot outlive his mistakes, because time doesn't heal wounds, it just lets them fester.
Yeah.
So in a moment of profound, painful clarity, he walks up to Captain Phillips and resigns from the spice crew on the spot.
Just quits.
He says he has to resolve issues from his past. He books passage on a ship heading to the freezing world of Lankavale. He is going to walk straight into the den of the Harkonnens, the family that hates him more than anything else in the universe, to finally face the consequences of his actions. He's choosing to step back into history.
It's an incredibly powerful moment of individual agency in a universe that treats people like cogs. So, to wrap up this massive deep dive, let's look back at what we've unpacked from these sources. We are looking at a universe that literally tore itself apart in blood and fire to banish machines, only to turn around and aggressively twist humans into biological hardware.
It's quite the irony.
We have religious fanatics secretly reading the diaries of robot serial killers. We have oligarchs building cyborg killing machines out of the brains of failed mutants. We have a sisterhood programming genetics like they are writing software. And we have immortal heroes crushed under the weight of the history they wrote.
It is a profound, sprawling study in irony and the inescapable nature of human flaws. They changed the technology, but they didn't change the human heart.
And so we want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly terrifying thought to mull over as you go about your day. Consider the ultimate original goal of those thinking machines centuries ago. Their goal, from Erasmus on down, was to perfectly organize, optimize, and control the chaotic, messy nature of humanity.
To make it logical.
Now look at the humans who won. Look at the Mentats organizing their minds into rigid, unfeeling data grids. Look at the sisterhood meticulously cataloging and controlling human bloodlines to optimize the species. Look at the navigators violently mutating their own flesh just to calculate fold space equations.
This is the ultimate question raised by these archives. Did the machines actually lose the war? Or did humanity simply willingly adopt the machine's programming, ensuring that the cold, calculating logic of computers survived and thrived inside the human mind?
Think back to that organ transplant we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive. The patient lived. The monitor is beeping. But the disease didn't die. It just found a new, warmer place to hide. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and keep questioning the narratives of history.